Welcome to the Times of Industry show. I have the legendary Doug Casey, best-selling author, and obviously owner of the internationalman.com. And he just wrote two phenomenal books. Speculator, which is amazing, and then Drug Lord, and he has a third one coming up very shortly. Doug, thank you for being on the show with us.
It's a pleasure as always, Lior. I'm speaking to you from the backward little South American welfare state of Uruguay right now.
You know, being in the southern hemisphere is not that bad of an idea of what's happening around the world, especially with COVID-19. You know, it's caused the big five companies on the public markets, at least Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, and Google, to be more valuable than than ever, and to be weighted in terms of market cap more than any other five group of companies ever before. It's about 24% of the S&P 500. It's unbelievable. And I've seen some voices, some very smart people, Ray Dalio and others, saying, look, these companies, they're more than just companies. They serve more than one utility. They're not just a business. They're safer than a government bond. They grow faster than traditional mom and pop blue chips. And even at P ratios of 30 and 40, they're cheaper than bonds. And so they're a quasi everything. They're a safe haven, they're a company, they're a store of value, and therefore don't be surprised if they go even higher. And I want to ask you if you think that, is this true? In other words, should investors start to think in terms of, hey, the stock market could be worth 30 and 40 times earnings, and it will still be cheaper than anything else that the universe of assets has to offer? And B, how does gold play in this type of environment?
Well, to start with, the Fab Five, which is to say Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and so forth. Look, we've seen this game before. During the 60s, there was something called the Nifty 50, and these were 50 stocks. Half of them have disappeared totally. Things like Eastman Kodak and General Electric. That all you had to do was set and forget, buy them. And look, we're in the midst of perhaps the greatest financial bubble in all of history right now. This is unbelievable what's going on, because it's all caused by money printing by central banks. That's what it's all about. Look, Apple, for instance, which is the largest market cap company in the world, $2 trillion right now. It's a no-growth business. Their earnings and revenues have been more or less flat, gone up about 2-3% per year over the last 5 years. It's not a growth stock. It's not even a utility, because it doesn't have utility kind of yields. An old aphorism in the market is high tech, big wreck. In high tech, there are always new developments, and they blow up the old companies. And I know it's unbelievable to think. I'm using an Apple computer right now. I love them. But I don't know what the next big thing is going to be. But paying that kind of money for a no-growth company is completely insane. And you mentioned gold. And I'm sure that all of your listeners are quite familiar with the argument for gold. It's the only financial asset that's not simultaneously somebody else's liability. It's money in its most basic form. We could do a whole show just on gold. But right now, just the cash that Apple has in its bank accounts is worth more than, well, not quite, it's worth slightly less than all of the producing gold stocks in the world. Just the cash that Apple has in its bank accounts is about the same as the market cap of every producing gold stock in the world. So sell Apple, and buy gold stocks because gold is going a lot higher, and gold stocks are very cheap relative to the price of gold. And I suspect the next bubble, we've seen bubbles in pot and technology and housing. I think the next bubble in the midst of a giant monetary crisis, which is brewing now again, is going to be gold, and more than that, gold stocks. So that's where your money should be right now. That's where all my money is, quite frankly.
Well, and Berkshire obviously disclosed the $500 million position in Barrick, and that's going to bring a lot of new entrants into this space as well. I want to ask you about President Trump. He's finishing 4 years in office. What was his term? What has his term taught you about America? That's one question I have for you. What have you learned about America from this? And what have you learned about the presidency, the office of the role of president of the United States, and about how it relates to the future?
Look, it's all an embarrassment. Not only do they elect Clinton once, but they reelected him. And not only did they elect that grinning chimpanzee, George W. Bush, once, but they reelected him. And then Obama, not once, but they reelected him. So now we have Donald Trump, and he's a different kettle of fish than all these previous presidents. He's got no philosophical center, no core whatsoever, no core beliefs. He's a complete opportunist. He knows nothing about economics, absolutely nothing about economics. Okay, that's my opening statement on Trump. Having said that, he's a much better choice than Biden and who's that woman that's running with them?
Kamala Harris.
Yeah, right. He's a much better choice than they are, even with all these faults I've just described. Why? Because at least Trump is a social conservative. He'd like to see, it's impossible, it's not going to happen, but he'd like to see the US go back to the days of Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best and the 1950s, where everything was mellow and quiet and things were, he'd like that socially, okay? He doesn't want to overturn society itself, which is what the Democrats actually want to do. And if they're elected, I think they'll succeed. So I don't vote because I don't want to be part of the problem. But I certainly hope Trump wins. Of course, it's not going to be great if he wins because he's going to print up money by the bucket load because he thinks that's going to stimulate the economy. And it will. It'll cause a crack up boom. It'll make the ultimate disaster even greater. It'll corrupt the average American even more, thinking that he ought to get things from the government. The worst thing about Trump being elected is that because he's, for some reason, associated with capitalism and the free market, which he has nothing to do with. He's a fascist, economically speaking. Well, they're all fascists, economically speaking, except the ones that are even worse, which is to say the ones that are actually socialists. So when the economy collapses, if he's reelected on his watch, capitalism will be blamed again, and people will want a really radical change. So, but look, I hope he's reelected because at least taxes will stay low, or they'll appear to stay low for the next 4 years. When the government spends it, it comes out either from taxes or inflation or debt, which will be defaulted on eventually. So this is a bad situation, Lior. I could not possibly be more bearish about the society, the future, what's going to happen, and so forth. The best I can say is go to some place perhaps like where I am, where you can watch it all on your widescreen instead of out your front window. I've been saying that for years, but the inevitable has turned into the imminent. That said, I think Biden's going to win. I think Biden's going to win.
Well,
because I think the average US voter has been that corrupted at this point that he's going to vote for a freebie. And by November, I expect the economy to be heading down again. and they'll want to change.
You
So
know, that's what I always say. That when you're in the ballot, the question you ask yourself is, "Am I really happy?" And if you're not, you're just gonna vote by default. You don't even care what the other choice is. You're not happy, so you're gonna vote by default.
anyway, we're being naive because it really doesn't matter. It's like Stalin said. He says, "Who votes doesn't count. What matters is who counts the votes." And the winner in this election is going to be who cheats the best. And they're both going to be cheating. This is the most important election since the election of 1860, when Abraham Lincoln won by the skin of his teeth. And the consequence of it was the war between the states. This is as big a deal as that election. Both going to cheat. And I think the Democrats are going to cheat better. They've got much more experience in it.
Interesting, very interesting. Actually, because I wrote a piece about the importance of this elections just today. I want to ask you. You know, you said about corruption in society, etc., and people being naive. What do you make of the BLM movement and the riots that have been going on?
Look, it's well known that the founders of that movement are basically all self-admitted, enthusiastic Marxist lesbians. And these people just want to go out and destroy things. I don't know where they're getting their money, who's paying for the bricks that get delivered on the streets before they go out and destroy Fifth Avenue and how many other streets. But this isn't a spontaneous movement. The spontaneous riots are going to happen later. This was planned. This was organized. I hate to sound like a conspiratorialist, okay, but
you're definitely not.
They're
saying that.
I mean, they're horrible people, and you go out and you set fires and break windows and loot stores. You should be arrested and you should be tried, and if you did it, convicted and serve serious time. But what do these idiots do? Half of the people in jail in the US are there for victimless crimes like drugs and prostitution. Those people should all be let go, and people that actually do damage, like the BLM rioters, should replace them in the prisons. So that's what I think of them. And the same with Antifa.
I want to ask you about the markets right now, because very famously on Twitter, at least, people like Dave Portnoy, who have been basically leading a generation of millennials and people on Robinhood with the slogan that stocks only go up. It started off being semi of a joke, but it's such a big deal right now, and we've seen the lowest short position on the S&P 500 right now in history. We've seen the biggest, the worst advanced decline line in history. In other words, 5 companies creating an index that ends the day up, where about 80 or 90% of the index is down for the day. So I want to ask you about this crack up boom, as we're calling it. The market's already at all-time highs. Are they moving much higher, or are we going into test the lows type of environment?
It's all a question of how much more money the Federal Reserve prints up. And after they do, where does it go? Well, right now, the only place that it really can go is into the market. So yeah, it could go higher, but at this point, I'm itching to buy some long-term S&P puts, because when this market rolls over and crashes, it's going to be something to behold. No, this is actually unbelievable. The good news about all these people getting involved in the market is that at some point, the argument they're gonna hear the argument and they're gonna buy it, that the place to be is in gold and gold stocks, which incidentally are the most volatile class of securities on the planet, more volatile than tech stocks, more volatile than any other class of stocks. Small gold stocks, there are about 2,000 in the world. Most of them are complete crap, incidentally. But that's true of most publicly traded stocks. But it's really serious with gold stocks because most of them don't have any gold. But the next thing that the Robinhood guys are going to get into is these small gold stocks. And they're not small caps. They're not micro caps. They're nano caps. Some of them are pico caps. They're that small. And when the Robinhood guys get into it, some of them are going to start running 10 to 1, which incidentally they tend to do we've had 5 gold stock bull markets since gold was freed up in 1971. And the average gold stock, small exploration development stock, not the majors, ran 10 to 1. Some ran 100 to 1. Some, a couple, ran 1,000 to 1. And not over the course of 30 years. I'm talking over the course of 30 months. So when the Robinhood guys get a whiff of these things and start buying them and follow the trend, that's going to be the place to be. And it could happen even if the regular market is rolling over and crashing, because gold is going to go through the roof. So that's why I'm betting on these gold stocks, Lior.
You know, I know you had a personal experience with companies that go up 100 to 1. You told me about companies that have done even better than that for you. One company, which has been a client of wealthresearchgroup.com for many years, as per our disclaimer, Gold Mining Inc., which you were a very early shareholder in. In fact, you might have been a founding shareholder, if I'm not mistaken. But can you, it's recently seen volume that is similar to volume that Kinross and Barrick and Newmont get. It was they've had a breakout in share price, and it's close to 150% up just in 2020 alone, even more. And they just created this amazing private entity, at least in my opinion, called Gold Royalty Corp, and they've assigned the former head of a major gold company as the CEO of this private company. I want to ask you, first of all, what do you think currently about this company? And going forward, what do you see as the prospects for this company during this bull market?
Well, as you know, I'm loath to talk about individual stocks for lots of reasons. One of them being that nobody should buy a stock just because they hear somebody on television or a podcast or what have you tout it, because there are 2,000 gold stocks. And as I said, most of them are crap. But okay, you asked a question. I'll tell you the answer. Gold Mining Inc. is one of my largest positions, not the largest, but close. So why? I like the management. I've known them for years. They're great guys. They're honest. They're competent. They have all the Boy Scout virtues, which is what you want. And when I'm looking to buy a gold stock, I've developed something called the 9 Ps that you look at. People's first, financing, spelled with the PH, is second, property. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that. This isn't a conversation about how to buy gold stocks. Why do I have all of this of goldmining.com? Because over the last 10 years, when gold has been descending from its previous peak of 1900 back in 2011, Amir, the guy that runs it, has been buying properties for 10 cents on the dollar. And at this point, Gold Mining Inc. in 5 different countries has a total of 25 million ounces of resource in that company that he's bought. At the same time, over the last decade, mining companies have not been exploring and have not been discovering more deposits. And gold mining is an industry where they're constantly eating the seed corn. Every ounce they produce is an ounce that they don't have to produce tomorrow. They have to constantly replace them. So here's my argument. Right now, Gold Mining Inc. Is you can buy gold in the ground, resource, not reserves. I don't want to go into the differences of it, at about $15 per ounce. Gold itself is $2,000 per ounce. I think by the time Gold Mining Inc. gets taken over by a major, which is what's going to happen, they're going to sell it for upwards of $100 an ounce, and that doesn't count. That doesn't count the gold royalty company that they're setting up, which itself is worth the current market cap of Gold Mining Inc. And it will be spun out eventually. So stocks trading at around, I don't know, $3 Canadian right now, something on that order. I expect that by the time this game comes to an end, it'll certainly be a 10-to-1 shot. And most important, there's very, very little, in my opinion, downside risk on it. So it's a one-way street. Anyway, that's a good gold talk. I could give you 10 others because all of these companies have reasons why they are good to own, at least the ones in my portfolio. I don't just throw a dart at the board. But,
sure. I want to ask you about the dollar, because that's obviously the main catalyst. What's happening right now with precious metals? It's the dollar is in a 2-year low, and its chart is looking very bad compared to the euro for the first time in 10 years. There's a lot of big hedge funds, Blackstone, BlackRock, etc. They're saying, hey, Europe is looking far more unified. The United States, Europe looks, much cheaper, and we're moving funds to Europe. We like Europe at this point. So with everything that's going on right now, and we've all heard President Trump saying the dollar is too strong, in my book, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think the dollar has entered a cyclical bear market after 9 years of a cyclical bull market versus a currency basket of currencies?
Well, forget what Trump says. He's an economic idiot. And when he says the dollar is too strong, the only way you can really weaken the dollar is by inflating the currency, which is to say destroying the currency, printing up more of them. So forget about what Trump says. It's almost as if you're listening to Maduro in Venezuela saying the peso is too strong. It needs to get weaker so we're more successful. Or whoever that idiot in Zimbabwe saying, oh, the Zim dollar is too strong. We need to weaken it. So these people are morons. Forget about that. But the problem with the dollar is that it's the world's currency. In 75% of the world, these people can't save kwachas or pulas or dirhams or these other crap currencies. They want to save dollars because it's liquid, it's international. So everybody owns the dollar today. There are tens of trillions of dollars outside the US, and they're all the people can own. And the government is still printing them up by more trillions. At some point, there's going to be a massive panic out of the dollar. Into what? Well, the answer to that question is probably into gold. So even though gold is at $2,000 per ounce, which it's not at bargain giveaway levels anymore, it's going higher. The dollar, no, don't buy the dollar. I mean, I think the trend is in motion. It's headed down. Yes, of course, you need the dollar for international commerce and that, but that's going to come to an end. Like even now, when the Russians and the Chinese trade with each other, they don't use yuan, they don't use rubles, they don't trust each other's fiat currencies. Idiotically, they have to use dollars, the currency of their adversary, and those dollars clear through New York. Makes no sense. They're going to gold. The whole world is going to gold. I know that sounds crazy because governments hate gold because it's a discipline on them. But that's what's going to happen just because we need money and we need a stable money. And the dollar is losing its position as a stable money.
Hey, interesting. What you're saying is you're saying the gold is not a giveaway anymore. So what do you think about silver?
Well, silver's not a giveaway anymore either, but relative to gold, look, it's a much, much smaller market, number one. Number two, There's not a lot of silver inventory. There's about in between 800 and a billion, 800 million and a billion ounces of silver that are mined every year. Most of them are used. It's not saved or hoarded the way gold is. Out of the 6 billion ounces of gold in the world, all of it's still above ground. Not the case with silver. So when the mare gets a bit in its teeth and these things start running, yeah, you could easily see silver go not just to its previous $50 high, but to a new high of $100 or more. Things can really get crazy. Yeah, I think silver is a good speculative vehicle, and silver stocks, of which there are very few, could run even more than the gold stocks, frankly.
Doug, you mentioned speculating. You wrote a book called The Speculator, and then you wrote Drug Lord. What are these two books about? I know they're part of a series, and can you tell people how they can look these books up on Amazon? Are they on Amazon or anywhere else?
Well, in preparation for our interview today, I grabbed a copy of Speculator. Here it is. Okay. And I think it's especially interesting for people that are interested in gold mining to read, because there's a lot of speculative wisdom, if I do say so myself, in this book. And about gold mining in particular, the story is about our hero who at age 23 gets lucky on a gold mining stock, goes to Africa to check it out, and gets involved in a bush war with boy soldiers and the whole thing. Makes a couple $100 million, has it stolen from him. And he, after running around the world for 7 years, he becomes a drug lord when he comes back to the US. And that's actually a quite interesting book too, if you're interested in the drug business, both legal and illegal. And he has that money stolen from him by the government also. So that he's kind of pissed off now. And the third book, which will be out next month, it'll be on Amazon, but also on, go to highgroundbooks.com to get a hardback version. He becomes an assassin. He figures there are some people that just need killing. And in all three of these books, I say things and explore a lot of concepts that frankly had best not be talked about in nonfiction books, whether we're talking about speculator or drug lord or assassin. So that's why I put it in novel form.
Yeah.
Novels are more fun to read than nonfiction also. So I urge people to get a copy of these books. You're going to enjoy them, I promise.
Doug,
it's a series of 7, each one getting more radical than the one before.
Doug, I really want to thank you for taking the time to share everything with us. You have incredible experience. If I'm not mistaken, you started trading securities in the 60s. Is that correct?
Well, in the 60s, yeah, in the 60s. And I do take an international outlook on things because I've been to 155 countries at this point and lived in 10. So I must have learned something from all that experience.
I enjoy every time we do an interview, and we'll definitely circle back in the future. Enjoy South America and everything that is in store for 2020, and hopefully we meet soon. Thank you, sir.
Fantastic, Lior. Talk to you later.